Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. Woman gives birth at 66 years old. Then doctors tell 7 officers to stand behind her. You don't see pregnant women over 66 very often, but the physicians are certain that this is the case. There's something strange about the birth of the kid by the lady Karen Connolly, and after performing a few tests on the mother and infant, the medical professionals swiftly uncover a startling finding. If only they'd been aware of this earlier. A newborn. Karen and her husband thought all their difficulties were over when they were finally able to deliver their child. They may have been elderly, but there was this adorable boy's first parents. However, there was something they were still unaware of. A startling finding. Doctors find that they need to confirm something 3 times before they genuinely allow themselves to trust what they're seeing after doing more tests on Karen and the baby. But there's no denying it. Delivering the news. The physicians inform Karen and George of the bad news, and upon hearing it, they're unable to help but weep. What, though, did the physician find? And how on earth could a 66-year-old lady ever manage to conceive? Hard to imagine. Doctors were astonished to learn that the 66-year-old lady was pregnant. They often questioned how Karen, who was older than them, could be carrying a child in her womb. Even Karen herself was taken aback by the news, in addition to the doctor. Hospitalization she underwent. Karen had gone to the hospital to complain about her long-lasting fatigue and nausea. She reasoned that maybe she'd picked up a virus or something. But the moment the doctors told her she was expecting a kid, she was in for the biggest shock. The test's outcome. She was 4 months pregnant, according to the test results. Karen said that she had lately been more aware of her size. She didn't think much about it, however, since she blamed her weight increase on her retirement. She believed that the reason was that she hadn't been going to work, but instead had been spending most of her time at home relaxing and eating unhealthily. Unusual circumstance. Although it wasn't impossible, it was uncommon for a woman Karen's age to get pregnant. The physicians immediately attempted to shift their attention after processing the shocking news. She caught the attention and concern of the medical professionals who wanted to make sure both mother and child were well. Further examinations of Karen. To ensure Karen's health and that of the developing baby, the hospital's medical personnel made the decision to do further tests on her. They discovered after doing a thorough examination that the mother and child were both doing well. They felt at ease after coming to this knowledge, but they didn't want to take any risks, so they made the decision to take some action. Instructions by the physicians. Karen was urged by the physicians to regularly visit the hospital up until the baby was born. They made it clear that they were committed to seeing to it that she and the child were healthy. While being taught, Karen was thinking about other things, and she was unaware of the passionate physicians. Her mind was wandering, so she paid little heed to the physician's instructions. Upon more examination, she came to a profound realization. As she made her way back home from the hospital, Karen was deep in thought. She was preoccupied with trying to make sense of all that had occurred and the news she had received from the hospital until she finally went home in the afternoon. The realization that she was going to be a mother again confused her more than the realization of her own age. Her curiosity persisted. Although she was taken aback by the news, she was also filled with skepticism. She questioned whether or not she still had the stamina to carry and birth another kid. The more she pondered the matter, the more anxious she became. Genealogy of Karen's relatives. Karen and George, her husband, have been together for over 4 decades. They raised 3 lovely children, all of whom are now married and living on their own. Karen has 3 grandkids, so it's okay to call her a grandmother. How George took the news. Karen was completely taken aback by George's lack of disbelief when she broke the news to him. George said he reacted that way because he had an inkling that something wonderful and unexpected was about to enter their life. As for the wonderful thing, he said he just didn't know what it was yet. The two of them have quite different points of view. It seemed like George was totally on board with the idea of having children again. He said that raising their older kids was the most rewarding experience of his life, and that he wished he could do it all over again. However, Karen had lingering concerns about the child. She wasn't sure whether she should continue the pregnancy because of her concerns about its viability. The deciding factor in her choice. Karen gave the situation a lot of thought before deciding to keep the baby. As a result of her children's perspective, she made up her mind quickly to keep the baby. When Karen told her kids about the pregnancy, they were astonished and reluctant to side with their dad, George. When it came down to it, they decided it was okay to retain it if it would make their parents pleased. It took a few months. As a result of having made that choice, Karen was resolved to accept whatever hardships her pregnancy would bring. The deadline was coming closer as the months passed. Karen's body suffered more throughout this pregnancy than during any of her others. On the worst days, she had a hard time even getting out of bed. Curious behavior from George. George, being a kind guy, would constantly go out of his way to make his wife happy and comfortable. George was a gentleman by nature, but his recent behavior puzzled Karen. George went above and beyond for her, and she thought it was really out of character for him. Karen had concerns about her husband's health. Karen married George, a traditionalist who was wed to the idea that men and women should perform different duties in society. Karen approved of George's traits since she, too, adhered to traditional gender norms. Because of George's unexpected assistance, she started to fear that he was hiding something from her throughout her pregnancy. Her skepticism would turn out to be justified. Karen couldn't help but wonder whether George was being so kind to her because of something she wasn't aware of. Karen first thought her hormones were to blame for her uncertainty about her marriage. With the passage of time, she became certain that she had been correct in her assumptions. Expecting a baby in a few weeks. Karen first felt the strain of bearing a baby at her advanced age at the precise 3-week mark before her due date. The severity of her illness at this point forced George to rush her to the hospital. The reason that she would be safer under the care of medical professionals. The hospital. Unfortunately, the lady was immediately examined by a doctor upon arrival at the hospital due to the seriousness of her condition. Eventually, the doctor realized he had to deliver the baby right away. Karen's safety was prioritized, thus the baby was delivered right away. George was relieved that he had taken his wife to the hospital at the correct time. Please share this with your friends and family.